I would like to welcome everybody to this discussion on the bridge materials for the classes 6, 7 and 8. I am Rudronil Ghosh, member, expert committee on school education. I have with me Mr. Rajiv Kumar Kaur. He is the head of the institution of Chetla Boys High School, and I also have with me Dr. Dhiman Basu, who is a member of expert committee on school education. In this part, we will be discussing about the bridge materials for the classes 6, 7 and 8 for environment and science. You all are aware that due to the COVID pandemic, the normal teaching learning process in the schools is severely affected. As a result, some learning gaps may have cropped up in the learners. These bridge materials will be very helpful in minimizing these learning gaps. Basically, these bridge materials will act as an accelerated learning package. That is, these bridge materials will help to make the learning fast paced. After the reopening of the schools, these bridge materials will be used for all the learners for at least 100 days. If it is needed for some learners, then these bridge materials can also be used beyond that 100-day period. Now, let us come to the part why these bridge materials were developed. The main focus for developing these bridge materials is to connect and bridge the important learning outcomes of the two classes of the two previous academic years with the most essential learning outcomes of the present academic year or the present class. Apart from this, these bridge materials in certain cases will act as a foundation study content. Now, the teachers, if they feel the need, can use this bridge materials along with the textbooks while teaching in the classroom. The students will be evaluated based on these bridge materials. Now, this is all about the general introduction about the bridge materials. Now, let us discuss what the structure of a bridge material will be like. The bridge material for any topic comprises of certain sections. In the first section, what the students or the learners will be able to do after going through the topic is listed. This will help the learners to understand whether they have achieved the desired level as given in the list. Next comes the content part. The content is presented with the help of various tables, charts, diagrams, etc. After the content part comes the points to remember section. In this section, certain important points related to the topic is given for the convenience of the students, so that they can take a look at the important points of the topic that is being discussed. After this, there is a section wherein the students are informed that where in the textbooks the students will find more detailed discussion on that specific topic. At the last, there are some sample questions which will help to gauge the learning level of the students. Apart from this, at the end of 2 or 3 topics, some sample question papers are included. This sample question papers will help us to understand whether the students have really understood those topics, and if not, where are they lacking. Now, this is all about the basic structure of the bridge materials. Now, I will go to Rajiv sir. Rajiv sir, can you please tell us how different topics related to physics are dealt in the bridge materials for the classes 6, 7 and 8?
In the physics chapters of class 6, we have reduced the quantity of the chapters, but without compromising the basic knowledge which is to be acquired in the chapters. There are 2 chapters like measurement, next is force and energy. In measurement chapter, we have tried to develop the basic concept of measurement and introduce the concept of measuring mass, surface area of sphere, volume of irregular bodies and weight of the bodies. In force and energy chapter, we have tried to develop the basic concept of how to define force and energy and concept of different forms of energy and their conversion with each other. In class 7, there are 2 chapters in physics, heat and light. In heat chapter, we have discussed the process of measuring temperature, how to prepare the measuring scale of Fahrenheit and centigrade, and a relationship between the 2 scale is also discussed. How the heat is transferred from the body with high temperature to low temperature. In light chapter, we have discussed about the luminous and non-luminous body, also the property of rectilinear propagation of light. Basic concept of reflection and refraction in plane surface have also been discussed in the compact manner in this chapter. In class 8, there are 2 chapters in physics. One is force and pressure and other is the force without contact. In force and pressure chapter, we have discussed the motion caused by force and action and reaction of force and measurement of force. The student will also know how to measure the pressure at a particular point of liquid of different density, and would be also acquainted with the initial concept of buoyancy force. And second chapter is the force without contact. In this chapter, student get the concept of force which are indicated without direct contact, like gravitational force, electrostatic force, magnetic force and force of gravity with gravitational force.
Thank you, Rajiv sir. Rajiv sir has given us a brief overview about the topics related to physics for the classes 6, 7 and 8 and how they are dealt in the bridge materials. Now, I would like to go to Dhiman sir. Dhiman sir, can you please apprise us how different topics related to chemistry are presented in the bridge materials for the classes 6, 7 and 8?
Okay. Actually, there are several chapters where the treatment needs to be foundational in nature, and there are some chapters which attempts to bridge the gap between 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. So, our treatment differs in 2 important aspects. In the foundational chapters, we need to develop certain basic materials which will be introduced for the first time, and in the materials meant for the bridging chapters, we need to incorporate things that we have taught in the earlier levels. So, the treatments are somewhat similar, but not exactly so, because in the foundational chapters we have introduced the subject from the scratch, and in the other chapters we have based our argument upon the materials that have been included in syllabi. Now, say for example, we have atom, molecule and elements included in class 6. Although the notion of atoms, molecules and elements were not introduced in the previous classes, we have told them about chemical reactions in the earlier classes. So, we have built upon the previous knowledge, but we introduce the notion of atoms, molecules and the notion of formula in a controlled and guided way. What is the meaning of this particular phrase, guided way? I will explain it to you. First thing is that we have carefully chosen examples from the repertory of chemical compounds where there is only one atom of an element as the central atom in a molecule, and there are some peripheral atoms. We have deliberately left ionic compounds out of focus because ionic compounds have been introduced later in class 7 and also in class 8. So, if a teacher intends to teach something about atoms, elements and compounds, he or she should confine himself or herself to covalent compounds and not introduce ionic ones. And compounds like ethane or any other compound where there are multiple central atoms should not be introduced at this level. Now, there is one chapter in class 6 which is called phenomena around us. Here we have introduced chemical reactions for the first time in a detailed way, although they were given some preliminary ideas about chemical reactions in class 5. So, we have drawn their attention to slow and fast reactions and also to irreversible changes and finally to periodic and aperiodic changes. There is one interesting thing regarding this. The students need to be informed about one important thing, that whenever we are talking about slow and fast reactions, we say it on the basis which is completely relative. Rusting of iron is fast enough compared to formation of coal. However, rusting of iron is very slow in comparison with some physiological changes that occur in our body. So, this relative sense should be cultivated. And one more important thing is that chemical reactions often depend upon the area which is exposed to the external milieu. I mean, if you have a piece of solid and if we pulverize it into smaller particles, then the dust reacts much faster because of enhanced surface area. We have introduced that concept in this class. And one more thing, when a student is introduced to the general properties of matter, I mean the thermal conductivity, electrical conductivity, color and other things, they must be informed about the nature of these properties. These properties are bulk properties which are not the properties of individual atoms and molecules. So, this distinction must be made. And in class 7, we have two chapters, one is atoms and molecules and the other is role of matter in environment. In the first chapter, I mean atoms and molecules, we have introduced the concept of ionic bonding, and covalent bonding was left out for class 8. So, the entire focus is upon ionic bonding and we have introduced it in a simple way, and lots of activities are incorporated there so that they can have a good practice. We have introduced the notion of chemical equations and introduced the concept of different types of chemical reactions like direct combination, double decomposition and decomposition reactions. In the other part, we have introduced the concept of biosynthesis and the importance of specific ions and biological molecules in making the human body, and the role of lipids, proteins, carbohydrates and nucleic acid in animal body. And also there are acids and bases we have introduced in a simple way, and some hands on experiments have been included here. And the next part, we have introduced the notion of acids and bases from the point of view of Arrhenius definition, and simple experiments have been included there. In class 8, we have atomic structure, where the materials included in class 7 have been dealt with in a broader perspective. And there is one more chapter called the general properties of matter, where we have the bulk properties of matter and that have been introduced in class 6. We have reintroduced them in a broader frame and introduced the notion of activity series there. So, with this I would say that the concepts included in chemistry have been divided in two parts, where there is the need of introducing new materials, those are foundational in nature, and the other is some recapitulation of earlier ideas with a broader perspective. Now, I would like to ask Rudronil to, so that he can share with us the views that they have highlighted in their part in biology.
Thank you, Dhiman sir. Dhiman sir has given a beautiful overview about how different topics of chemistry are dealt in the bridge materials. Now, I would like to discuss how different topics related to biology and environment are represented in the bridge materials for the classes 6, 7 and 8. Let us first talk about class 6. In class 6, the chapter that we have from biology is interdependence of organisms and the environment. This topic is basically a combination of a bridge material and a foundation study content. Now, let us discuss it with some examples. The students have studied the dependence of humans on plants for food, clothes and medicines, and also the dependence of humans on animals for food in the classes 3 and 4. So, these concepts have been included in the bridge material as part of the bridging material. But some other concepts like pollination, where the plants depend on the animals, is new to the learners. So, the concept of pollination has been included in the bridge material as part of the foundation study content. Now, let us come to the second topic for class 6 from biology, that is human body. In this topic, there are certain concepts like preliminary idea about stethoscope, heart, bones, bone joints, muscles, which the learners have studied in class 5. So, these topics are included as part of the bridge material, but certain other topics like the structure and function of lungs, different components of blood are new to the learners. So, these topics are included as part of the foundation study content. But apart from this, in this topic there are certain other sections like types of bone joints. In the types of bone joints, two examples are dealt in this topic. They are the hip joints and the knee joint. In hip joint, a ball and socket joint, it has been discussed how this type of joint moves, and in the knee joint, which is a kind of hinge joint, it has been discussed how this knee joint moves and how it is different from another hinge joint, that is elbow. Now, this is all about the topics from biology for class 6. Now, let us come to the topics for class 7. In class 7, we have human food. In human food, the source, importance and related problems of different food components, that is carbohydrates, proteins, fats, phytochemicals, fibers, vitamins, minerals are discussed. In this section, different pictures of the sources of different food components are given, and after that certain related health problems linked with carbohydrate, proteins and fats are discussed. After that, certain deficiency symptoms related with minerals and vitamins are also discussed. The second chapter that we have in class 7 from biology and environment is morphological diversity of plants. In this topic, we discussed the structure and function of root, stems, leaves, flowers, fruits and seeds. And not only this, in this topic we have also discussed the different kinds of modified stems and their function, different kinds of modified roots and their functions, and also certain modification of leaves. This concludes the topics from biology and environment for class 7. Now, let us come to class 8. In class 8, we have two topics from biology and environment. The first one is the structure of living organisms. In this topic, different parts of plant and animal cells are discussed, but this topic deals with cells, and the concept of cells is new to the students, though they have a brief reference of cells in class 6. So, in this chapter the idea about the cells is given at first, then the discovery of cell, then how can we see the cells is given, and in this section a comparison of 3 types of microscopes, namely simple microscope, compound microscope and electron microscope is given. Then there are certain discussions about the structures of different cells in human body and their functions, namely RBC, muscle cells, neurons. After this, there is a brief discussion on tissue. How do we define tissue? What is the relationship between cells and tissues? And after that, different parts of plant and animal cells and their structure and function are discussed. Now, coming to the last part that we have from biology and environment in class 8, the name of that topic is human food and food production. Again, this topic is new to the students, though the students have a very brief idea about cultivation from class 4, though these were a long time back. So, this chapter or this topic starts with what is agriculture, what are the steps of agricultural practices like preparation of the soil, sowing the seeds, organic manure and inorganic fertilizers, irrigation, control of pests, harvesting, storage. These are the steps. So, these steps are discussed in detail, and then the cultivation of paddy and tea are discussed. And in this discussion, the nutritive value of rice and the nutritive value or the benefits of drinking tea is discussed. Apart from this, different types of paddy that we cultivate in West Bengal, that is Aush, Amon and Boro, was discussed. After this, the propagation of tea from seed or vegetative propagation has been discussed. The next part in this topic is the fish culture and rearing of fowls. In fish culture, different stages of fish culture has been discussed, from the spawns to the adult fishes, and apart from this, composite fish culture, CH-weight fish culture has been discussed. In the section rearing of fowls, different modern methods of rearing fowls, like rearing fowls in battery cage and deep litter method has been discussed. Also in this section, the nutritive value of fish and the nutritive value of poultry meat has been discussed. So, this is basically how the bridge materials have progressed for environment and science for the classes 6, 7 and 8. So, it is very apparent from the discussions that we have till now is that certain related topics from previous classes have been placed in the bridge materials. Apart from this, certain other topics that are new to the students have also been included in the bridge material as foundation study content. So, this endeavor will prove to be fruitful only if these bridge materials are able to minimize the learning gaps of the students. This is only possible with your help. We are looking forward to your active cooperation in this regard. Thank you.